This is Tune Into Gaming, episode 10. I'm Quactical.
And I'm North Kozar.
And you are the audience. Dun dun dun!
That's plot twist. Wow.
Yeah, really.
But I guess since the framework of this episode is going to be me just frantically talking about Legend of Zelda, I guess I get to ask you, what have you been playing?
You do. You certainly do. I don't even know. I feel like I've been just working in a sweatshop.
Oh, really? What's week. That like?
Oh my goodness. Well, except it's only sweaty between like 3 and 5 because of there's actually this really annoying part of the day where the sun comes through the window, like right in the peripheral vision on my left side.
Ew.
Even through the blinds. And then just people like walking by or like the person sitting next to me moving at their desk, like changes the angle of the light. So it's like this constant moving like light on right in my left peripheral vision. And it's just a recipe for like all the anger always.
And I imagine headaches and also just left eye blindness after a while.
Yeah, he was like, we should start bringing sunglasses to work. It's like, yeah, seriously.
That sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, but I've just been honestly working way too much and not spending enough time like relaxing or being a person that's a human.
Yeah, it's important to really have that balance, I think.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I definitely really start to feel it when I haven't had that time, right? Like, you know, the last couple of days I felt so unproductive, like I'm working more and more and more, and yet I'm doing less and less and less, right?
Yeah.
You can just like feel it like suck away from your life force.
Yeah.
You cease being a human, continue being robot.
It sort of just like kind of wears down on you if you don't kind of have that balance between the work and relax or the work and play. And I think that I'm kind of on the opposite spectrum of that in terms of just like trying to, you know, pursue music stuff and whatnot. It's been really difficult, like trying to network and not get a whole lot of return for perceived investment. So it's more like I feel like I'm, similarly, I feel like I'm doing a lot but not getting a lot out of it or like back in return. But I don't have, the added, in my eyes, benefit of having a job that I can be like, well, at least I'm doing this and making money, So it's all about that balance. That's a really important, I think, factor in a lot of things. But
yeah, and like feeling like you're actually accomplishing something too. And I think that's kind of what's been wearing on me about it as well, is that, I don't necessarily feel like I'm having the impact that I would like to. And it also doesn't feel like that's totally under my control either. So it just ends up being one of those situations where I kind of feel stuck.
Yeah. Well, then I guess something to maybe look for is find the little accomplishments. I mean, I think it's easier said than done, but trying to find the little things throughout the day or whatnot that you can be like, hey, this is something I did today, and this is good because I've accomplished this today. Whatever that may be, it's when the bigger things sort of are kind of wearing down on you and whatnot. I think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, for me, what's always helped like keep my mind in a good place is actually other kinds of work, which is like working on my personal projects like music or like game programming or something like that. But that only works when you still have enough energy to be able to do that. And then at a certain point, and that's the, the unfortunate part about having like a full-time, like normal day job is that, sometimes it just sucks up all of your life and like you don't have any energy left for things that are outside of it. It kind of, it eats up that time if you're not able to actually like have the power to push it back sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah, when it kind of gets out of your control, that makes sense. And then you're just sort of burnt out and you're like, I don't want to work on anything. I just want to not do anything. So maybe it's more of like a triangle of brain quiet, not do anything time, working, and then like personal pursuits and endeavors.
Right, because like feeling that like personal accomplishment, like this is something I want to do and like I'm making progress on that. Like I think that's a really important form of validation as well. And like you don't get that from work. You get different kinds of validation. You get the validation of, I've accomplished something, for somebody else, but like I'm getting paid for it, but I'm also like showing that my skills are valuable and that I'm helpful to other people, right? But then your personal projects, it's like this is something I care about, this is something I'm invested in, and this is something I find fun. And yes, it's work too, but like you're getting that satisfaction out of it as well. But then you also need like rest. So you're right. I do definitely feel it's like a triangle.
Yeah, and I think that might be some of my struggle as well with it, is because this thing that used to be that, personal pursuit, I'm trying to make more than that. And so I don't have as much of that, like, here's this thing that I do for fun and I enjoy because it's, this thing. And that's, I think one of the risks people often say when you're trying to turn an art into a career or whatnot, is that you,
certainly,
kind of start to blur that line. And I might just be grappling with some of that as well, because then it's like, well, I have, playing video games, but I'm also trying to do streaming and whatnot on more of a schedule. And I think that, not that it's taking the fun out of playing, because I still enjoy playing video games. Don't get me wrong. That's not ever going to not be fun.
Video games suck.
But it's, again, trying to do things for the sake of a really, really long-term goal, as opposed to just doing them for the short-term goal of, I want to do this now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it might be better to do it for the short-term goal instead of trying to look too far down the road, because it can get really daunting when you're fixated too far on the horizon. You're like, well, I'm never going to get there.
Right. Especially then when you then you can look on the day level and you see, wow, day to day, I'm not making any progress at all. I'm actually moving backwards. Like, fuck this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely is a mindset thing. And you're right that coming into some of that time with the mindset of, I just want to focus on what I want to do now. Like I think that's the key, is you have to spend time where you're focused. Okay, I'm trying to like get a finished product here. And then other time that just, I'm going to, play around. I'm going to do whatever. Because if you spent as much time like doing the fun stuff as you feel like you should be doing with the work, you'll make as much progress as you think you should, right? Because that's actually where you make the progress. Weirdly, it's like, it's this whole head trip of, by trying to get yourself to like buckle down and do more, you actually end up doing less and less and less. And that's exactly like, what I feel like I'm feeling on All Friends.
Yeah. So then how do we, I guess, trick our brain into not fixating on it in that way, so we can just, do and enjoy what we're working on?
That's like, the age old question for a lot of people who, especially when you have like multiple pursuits too. I think sometimes if you're on like a path that's really predefined, it can be sometimes easier, because you can focus on the day to day and you say, okay, I know I'm on the right path. But when it's something like that's an artistic pursuit, you're like, well, I have to define the path and then also walk it. Like,
right. There's no like checkpoints or milestones along the way that are already set out. You have to discern what those are and what those are going to be for you along the way. It's not like, well, you've worked this long and now you're ready for advancement, or you're ready for a new skill or whatnot.
You've leveled up from 3 to 4. Like, no, it's it's the progression of your art form that you want, what you feel like you have to express, and come to a point where you actually feel like you can express that. And that's also hard, because the arts are all about, I have this thing that I can feel and I want to express it, and I can express like 20% of it.
Right. I'm looking forward to the day when they just have like the neural implants and you can just plug in and download all of like the information that you want to express creatively. So it's just like, I want this song, plug in, 5 minutes later you have a fully complete song.
Yeah.
That would be the day.
I wonder, wouldn't that ruin things though? Because then all the, like, there wouldn't be any effort to it anymore.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how it would work in terms of like, you'd have to think really hard. So those of us overthinkers would be great at it, because or that would make it worse, because you would get this jumbled nonsensical mess that comes out.
I feel like that's what already comes out of my brain.
Yes. Oh man. But
true story.
I think that it would be, again, kind of trying to just like find something that we can focus in on that's more of a personal, smaller term thing. Like, I mean, we're talking about the game that you've been working on creating, and how I could help working on that, doing some of the sound and whatnot. I think if we don't even have to set like a structured guideline, because again, like if you get, I think, too frameworky or too structured with that kind of thing, it can be easy to get too big picture, I guess. But some amount of framework, or some amount of at least like, this month let's try and do this or whatnot. having to define the goals is difficult because I think both of us are not necessarily like overachievers, but we want to overachieve in our goal setting. So we set higher goals than is reasonable.
Realistic goal setting is
I think
a very challenging skill, in my opinion.
I think this podcast is one of the most realistic things that we've set for ourselves and been able to stick with it really well. And I'm proud and impressed with us that we've stuck through it, and we're just kind of turning it into our own personal voice box that if someone listens, cool. And if not, we have this time that we can talk like we're going to talk anyway. But
and that's actually, I think, the most sane piece of advice I've heard is when it comes to, doing work on things that you care about and are passionate about, you have to make it about, sometimes it's said as like, you have to make it about the work, but you have to make it about the thing that you're doing and like doing it in the moment and not the goals that you want to get to with it. Because then if it becomes about the goals, sometimes then what you're doing, like the music or the game design, whatever, becomes just a tool, and then it's just you're just using it. You're not like in it and enjoying it and experiencing it in the same way, right?
Yeah. I feel like that also could,
but
it does, it definitely, and I feel like that could also really limit your creativity with it as well, because when you're using it just or viewing it just as a tool in that regard, you're no longer as open-minded. You're no longer as fully experiential with what you're doing. So you're less likely to try something new and risky. You're like, I know this works and this is what has been done. So I'm just going to do this. Like, this is fine. This is safe. But if you're in it just for that moment or for that experience, you might be like, well, what the heck? Let's try this. Let's see what happens with this. Or, me thinking in those terms with like sound design specifically, but any sort of creative or any sort of design type of thing, I think that can ring true for.
Yeah, it's like if you're making music and you're saying, okay, I wanna make this album, then you're saying music making is the skill that produces albums. And it's like, no, that's not the case. Music making is a skill that produces music. Like,
right.
But it's easy to just like point yourself at that goal and then that's all you can see.
Yeah, and again, for example, I'm thinking about trying to make another EP sometime this year, and so I'm like, okay, I want to make an EP. What should I like work on for it? And it's like, should I approach it that way, or should I just make music and then pull from those tracks to put together either like similar sounds or the 4 tracks that I like the most into an EP? It's kind of like what you're saying is how do I want to approach that? Because the last time I did my first EP was just 4 tracks that I was like, these sound cool and they kind of sound similar to each other and I like them, so let's polish them up, finish them, and make them sound good. And I don't know.
I should do that.
Yeah, you've got a lot of stuff there that you can probably polish up and put together. That might give you a nice sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, I've been thinking that too, because I've been making combination electronic / acoustic combined music for like years now, and I've got a lot of stuff that I've made, like, and I should look at that when I say that I haven't been productive, because just because I haven't been like releasing albums with it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, right? Like, and that's one thing for me, is that I tend to not value the time like retrospectively, right? I'm looking back and I say, I did all this stuff, but I didn't get anything out of it, right? I didn't like advance I didn't advance myself with it. Well, yes, I did, but I'm just not considering it, right? It's like, because doing it was the advancement that I needed. There didn't need to be like extra outcome from it.
It just, the fact that you have sat down and created something is a big deal.
And I can feel it now too, because when it comes to sitting down and like composing something or like transcribing an idea into a song, like, it's so much easier. It's actually like, it is so much easier. And even that doesn't mean that like the earlier stuff like was necessarily like super simplistic. In some ways it was, but in other ways it was more complicated. But it's like, I found where I can make it simpler in some ways and more complex in other ways. And it's like, you find all those best ways to do it for you.
Definitely. And that's something that you're only going to get by just doing it and creating more. And so the fact that you have I have like over 60 works in progress sitting in a folder that are just MP3s, was like ranging from 10 seconds to a couple minutes, just because it's like, I've done these things, they never went anywhere, but I learned something working on them. You know, it's not that I did nothing. I tried something new. And one of the most productive things I ever did for myself was I did a new project a day for 40 days. And during that time, I produced a lot of nonsense, but I produced a couple good things.
Yeah.
A couple of which I ended up finishing and completing. But by and large, I learned a lot because I was constantly doing new stuff, constantly challenging myself and working for just a little bit a day on whatever came to mind.
And you weren't worried about like, oh, am I going to be able to turn this into a finished product?
Yeah. Or like, is this going to sound good, quote unquote, like this other successful artist? Or, I had nothing to compare myself to because it was me comparing against nothing. I didn't let myself listen to any of the previous tracks that I'd worked on. I didn't let myself go back to any of them. It was always a new thing each day until the end when I could go back and listen to everything. But it was just like a kind of a mental challenge in that way. And I think that I go back and listen to some of my older, quote unquote, completed, finished things that I've uploaded to the internet. And I find that some of them I'm like, wow, how the heck did I do that? Like looking back and thinking about how complicated the process was and how many hours I spent on it. And I look and I've done something now, kind of like what you were saying, in half the time, which is perceivably just as good of quality, or I feel it is just
or
as
better
good of
sometimes.
quality. Yeah. So it's, constantly the process is being refined and improved upon. And it's hard to, I guess, sometimes count that as being productive or accomplishing something because of how we as a society view accomplishments in terms of like, you're making money off of it, or you're becoming famous from it, or, what is the defining of success by society. But really, what's important is the defining of success by you as the individual, as the artist, which is easier, again, said than done in terms of just thinking about it in one's brain.
But, like that's where, giving yourself credit for those accomplishments, I think, is really important. Like the fact that you were able to actually even just produce a new idea every day for 40 days is actually an accomplishment in and of itself. Like a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that. And a lot of people would take, a long time practicing how to write music to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's like you can say, oh, well, some of them maybe weren't the best or they came out somewhat nonsense, but just the fact that you were able to get down as much as you did within each of those days is a reflection of the advancement you've made on your skills.
Yeah. And so I think it's nice that I kind of have that to mentally fall back on and be like, look, you did this.
You did the thing. Congratulations. Yeah.
And that was one of those smaller goals that the only thing that really kept me accountable to it was making tally marks on a piece of paper when I finished my hour of music work that day. And I mean, that might not be something that would work for everyone, but finding that thing that you can set yourself a small and achievable goal and being able to find success in that, as opposed to finding success in a broader form of, money or popularity or what have you, that again is more broadly defined as successful or having accomplishment by society. I think that that's really something that's important to be able to continue to tread forward with your craft, whatever it is.
And to come full circle on this is why a lot of people find that like a framework is helpful for them, because it gives them like a standard to measure, like, oh, I've been abiding by the framework, so that is success, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how we started off like shitting on the framework and then coming back and being like, yeah, like sometimes it actually is helpful.
Yeah, it definitely can help. And I was sort of, going back and forth on describing that because for me, sometimes I get too rigid in creating that framework and I get too big picture. And so I lose sight of the smaller goals. And so while I'm achieving all of these smaller goals, they're not as recognized in terms of complete the album or, complete the thing or do the whatever.
Do the whatever.
It's creating a framework in which you still have that sense of accomplishment on smaller goals to give yourself those check marks along the way. And it could just, I might just be bad at frameworking or
framework better, fool.
But yeah, I think that's a really good point.
For me, looking at it, one thing that I don't give myself credit for that I should is like how far my keyboard playing has come. Like I, started basically teaching myself to play the keyboard like 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, I would say piano, but I don't have an actual piano.
The skill, yeah.
But, now I like actually if I look at what I'm able to do, like I can play fairly comfortably something I already know with two hands. Like something I don't know, I can't play very comfortably with two hands. But like that's actually really cool and something that like I didn't initially think I was like going to be able to get to, right?
That's awesome. I wish I could do that.
But like recently I've really just been, saying that my rule for myself is that I have to play at least once a day. Like, but so like that's the framework, right? But where I've given myself the flexibility to not make it be work is I don't care what I play. I don't really care for how long I play. Like none of that matters as long as I just play a little bit. Like, and what ends up happening is that I end up actually practicing more because I'm going in with that mindset than if I sit down, okay, I have to like practice. So I'm like advancing my skills as opposed to just messing around.
You're giving yourself that open-ended thing where it's just do something, and that was like what I did with the 40 project thing was it was just do something. And so it left it completely open-ended. And again, I would, some days I would work for hours and other days I would work for 30 minutes or, whatever, but it's, not being restrictive or confining, I think is important for sure.
Yeah. It's so you can, I think here's the rub. You can set a framework around measuring the work, but you can't set a framework around measuring the progress. Because if you say, I need to make X amount of progress every day, then you're like setting yourself up for brain times. Because then you're, on a day where you're like, man, I'm don't really feel as productive. I'm just kind of noodling around. Then you're going to feel really shitty. And then the next day you're going to come and be like, okay, well now I'm behind because I didn't make progress yesterday and I needed to make this more progress today. And then it just like builds and builds, right?
And then you're always perpetually behind and can never get yourself out of the hole. That makes you feel like it. It's that's the perception. That makes a lot of sense, really.
Whereas if it's about just doing it, you can never be behind unless you just don't do it. But then you can say like, okay, well, I just need to do it now. The solution is simple. It's not like you have to like overwork yourself or like stress about it in that sense.
Yeah. And again, it, might be easier said than done, but I think that is definitely a good way to look at it, or a better way to look at it. So it's not bogged down in this, I guess, veil or guise of productivity, which is something that is super subjective. And I think impossible to measure because because it is so subjective. It's going to be different for every person, for every situation and scenario. So
yeah, well, and sometimes some people say, oh, it's not impossible to measure. You just measure the output. That's what you're producing. But that's what leads to these like toxic mindsets in the first place, I think.
Yeah,
is that sort of naive understanding of how the process works.
Yeah, well, and if you're just looking at the output again, unless you're doing something where you can output something every day, like if it's an art form, you might spend months on one painting or one song, and it's gonna not feel good because you're gonna be like, man, I've only created one thing in an entire month, just based on like numbers and the output of things. But you've spent hours and hours working on it every single day, which is really productive, and a lot of things that stick to itness and the dedication to it is really vital and important to creating something.
Stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you finish it and you look back and then you say, wow, man, this could have been better, or I should have done this differently, yada yada yada. And it's so easy to then just like, after you've put in all that work, then like tear yourself down after the fact because and feel again like you haven't made enough progress because you're focusing on, well, all I did that month was make this one song. And look, it still has all these problems.
Yeah. I wrote part of my senior capstone project was on the creative process, and I wrote a paper about defining the creative process, or how we could maybe define the creative process. And a lot of what we're talking about now is kind of touching on some of that in terms of like, when you get to the end and you've created this thing, then what do you do with it? And that's like exactly like what you're saying. There's this tendency to look back and be like, well, this isn't good, or this could be better, or you never get to that stage and you're perpetually caught in this, like, I need to tweak this thing to make this better, or I need to do that. And so you never have something that's finished. And I think finishing projects and finishing things is important, but what is defining productivity in your personal work should not be that number of things produced necessarily. Obviously, that's going to depend on what your personal pursuits are, but I think that by and large, it's going to be something that's going to make it harder for you to mentally feel like you're accomplishing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's tough though. A lot of this I think comes from society who holds up these like geniuses of their creative crafts as, especially when they're so prolific, right? Some of these artists are producing album after album after album after album, and and they're all so good, right? Like, we definitely as a society deify those kind of figures, but then like, I think sometimes it's difficult to see that takes a lot of work to be able to get to there, not in like the actual quality of the output itself, but actually just in the craft of like not like murdering your brain in the process.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that it isn't with the craft itself, like it also is.
Right.
But
definitely.
But just the mental aspect is like its own skill. And there's been supremely talented artists, right, who have burned out and like not, I mean, I don't want to use the phrase like not reach their potential, but maybe not done what they would have wanted to have done with their craft, because maybe they didn't have that mental aspect mastered to the same extent as they had the actual like raw creative part of it, right?
Yeah.
And
a lot of that I think kind of comes off of having some form of maybe not feedback, but just like input into things,
mm-hmm.
whether it's your own reflectiveness on what you have done and where you're going. Or, I think by and large, looking at any of the internet people, musicians, YouTubers, whatever, there's this aspect of right place, right time that comes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of, the like quote unquote overnight discovered artist or viral sensation, I think that our generation and nowadays in society, there's this sense of or this entitlement to instant gratification because of that, because
mm-hmm.
we've seen these people rise to the top overnight, or because we've seen all of this stuff happen. It's like, well, why can't that be me? I should be able to put in perceptively a year's worth of work and be there already. But it's like, you have no idea how much work these people have put into things beforehand.
Right.
And yeah, sometimes it's going to have this viral sensation that's just going to happen, but that's not something that you can rely on. And, it's not a good, mental space to be in if your end goal is just popularity.
Yeah.
You should be doing the thing because you love to do it and it's something that you want to have as a personal pursuit, not just because it's going to get you money or get you, fame. I think what I'm hoping with what I'm doing is that I can turn something I love to do into what earns me, a livelihood so I can have food and whatnot. But like, I'm starting to kind of realize that might not be the best path for me. Not in the sense that, I don't want to do music, this thing that I love to do, but just that I think that it needs to be something more personal and not tied into this financial gain, which is difficult for me to come to terms with because I want to be able to spend tons of time on it. And, having a full-time job is going to obviously detract from that. But I think that it's something that will happen as it's meant to happen. And as long as I continue to work on music, who knows when or where that might be. But it doesn't have to be something that I invest all of my life into right now and suddenly am there. Like,
yeah, because it's just not going to happen like that anyway. Yeah.
No, it's not. And I knew that coming into things, but I think that, and again, it's one of those things that artists will often say that it's sometimes dangerous to mingle your creative pursuit with the financial money side of things, because then you lose some of the spark that goes into it and some of what makes it fun, which is just doing it for you type of thing. But
yeah, I think for music, that's why I've always loved the performance side of it, because that's something that, like, yes, you can get money from, but just in and of itself, there's so much joy from like playing somewhere and like playing with a good group of musicians that, like, for me, that's honestly what I want to get out of it more than anything. Like, I like making music by myself, but more than anything, I want to play with other people. And that's kind of why I actually kind of feel stuck with it right now, even despite the fact that I'm making progress in my own composition and like my own practice, etc. Is because, I've moved around so much and I'm also kind of socially awkward. So like, I'm really struggling to just find the existence of other musicians, let alone network with them. It's like, and then on top of that, then musicians who would be interested in playing stuff that I'm also interested in playing. Like it's one of those things like that. That's a goal that seems so daunting, and maybe it shouldn't, but it's something that it's hard for me to then find a framework of like, oh, how do I work on this every day? Like, I don't fucking know.
Well, I think again, hearing that, it sounds like a really big picture kind of goal. Like, I want to find people to be able to play with or do performance stuff with, like,
Or I mean, honestly, I would settle for just play with at all, like in someone's garage, like,
yeah,
but just play, have people that to play with, like, seriously.
But I think a way that you could maybe bring that down is looking at what local events there are that have musicians playing that are that do some sort of jazz, something that you would enjoy going to,
right,
or would enjoy wanting to play, and just going there and talking to people that are there watching these other musicians play, not necessarily the musicians themselves, but just other people that are there, and just kind of doing that, because then you get out and you get to see other people playing, which is fun in and of itself. But like, just having that time to talk with other maybe like-minded people that are there, or maybe not. And it's not something that you will go to one event and be like, look, now I've
solved the problem.
Yeah. But I think that having something a little more tangible in that way might help. Again, and for me on my side, it's going to like GDC or something would be beneficial. But it's it can be a little daunting putting yourself out there in that way. But I think that's the best way to start, at least.
Yeah. And then there's all sorts of other like fears and paranoias about like, oh well, I haven't actually had any like formal training. Like, I've taught myself mostly. So like, people are just going to like laugh me out of the room, which has never happened. So like, I don't know why I'm still afraid of that. And like, I've gone and like played with some like pretty good players at times. Like, I definitely am not there with my instrumental playing right now, because I haven't been doing it. But
right, like
when I was playing with like really good players, my chops were pretty good. And so it's like, it's funny that that's still a fear of mine, even though that's never happened. But it still
I think
is.
That's one of those fears that goes along with any sort of art form, is the sharing it with the public is scary, because whatever, however you pursue your art is a very, personal thing, and sharing that can make you very vulnerable. And there's always that fear of being laughed out of the room, or that potential backlash or criticism that is not like, well, this could be better, but it's like, wow, this just sucks.
Honestly, I'm less afraid of sharing it with the public than I am sharing it with other musicians, because it's like, for most people, when it's like, I'm like, whatever, they don't really know much about the process anyway. So like, their opinion doesn't hold much weight for me. But then it's someone who like does know like what the process is like, etc. Then it's like, well, now their opinion is much more valid to my brain, right?
And it sounds like that you just will need to find the right group of people who's willing to help you grow as a musician, a performative musician, and who also want to grow themselves, and just kind of using that to feed off each other. I think that is also just what's really important about art forms, is finding, it's important, like you were saying, to have some of your work out there to the public, but having that group of fellow musicians that you can bounce ideas off of, or play with, and just have that support, who understand kind of what you're going through when you have those mental struggles with everything we're talking about here. But just I think that support is really important as well.
Yeah, I definitely, I don't want to say like I need it, because then I sound like so dependent, but it's definitely a really important component of creative pursuits, is like having even just people to bounce other ideas with, like, because if you're just producing your own creative output, then you're really kind of in an echo chamber, right? Like, you can only hear what you're producing, and it's like, oh wow, this is amazing. Just keep hitting this, even if it's shit, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that it's like actually terrible. It just means that, like, I think, again, it limits your potential for expression, and it limits your creativity when you're not also hearing the creative output of other people who you have some connection with, especially. Like,
yeah, I mean, some of them, I love listening to other music, and that's some of the times that I feel the most creatively inspired, is hearing something and being like, that's really cool. Like, it's not like I want to immediately go and emulate that, but it makes me want to do something of my own that I also feel is cool,
Yeah. I don't know. It's such a difficult process. Like, I think, and it applies, when I say I mean, any creative pursuit. I just think creative pursuits in general are so challenging, because they require so much technical expertise, pretty much across the board, right? And then also so much like personal, I don't want to say expertise, but just like strength and the ability to like keep your ego in check, to keep your self-doubt in check, to keep your self-criticism in check, like all of these things that you need to be able to go like, yeah, you're important, I need to listen to you, but not all the time. And that's so hard. Like, that's like been my struggle. I feel like is, I can either listen to the voice or not. I can't like listen to it some of the time.
And again, to bring this back even more fuller circle, it is back to the balance thing, with the triangle or whatever that we started out with, having that balance and being
triangles are difficult to balance.
It's the balance beam. You got the whatever, but again, like you're saying, the voices of like the self-criticism and being able to manage all of that. I think that is a skill and something that is always going to be teetering back and forth, and you're going to be always struggling with that because it's always going to be going one way or the other, and you have to kind of find ways to keep that in check. And I think the best, at least from where I am and my perception of my own creative craft, the best way for me to help balance that out for myself is the support and feedback of other like-minded individuals. And I think that kind of sounds like that's where you're at as well, to help keep those self-criticism voices in check, but also to help challenge yourself and find ways to grow as a musician. That having that input and that support from others is really important. And I mean, we can kind of do that for each other. Our approaches are different in our creative craft, so I think that there is a bit of a disconnect in or the extent to which we can support each other in that way. And just the physical distance, I think, also plays into it a bit as well. But it's a lifelong thing, any sort of art form, and it's a dedication that is always impressive to me, whoever and however people choose to take on their art.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like how for so many people it's like they can't imagine not doing it either. Like, despite all the struggle of it, like I can't imagine myself not trying to play music, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of where it ends up as far as like, making money off of it, how much of a part of my career it's going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Regardless of any of those things, like I can't imagine myself not wanting to write music and play music and think about music and have music that's my brain is pumping into my ears inside my head constantly.
it runs through the bloodstream. And I totally agree. There might be times where I don't create as much, or there might be times where I'm not making music for a while, but it's always going to be something I'm going to come back to. And if I'm not creating music, I'm listening to or finding new music, or I am creating music in my head. It's just not being recorded or, put down into MIDI form or whatnot. So it's always something that's going to be there. And I think that that's very true with anyone who is, really seriously taken up an art form and they've found a passion for it. And that passion is something that it'll be there with you forever. It'll wax and wane, and it'll take whatever form to whatever level of productivity it may be, but it's gonna stick there with you.
Yeah,
it'll keep reminding you that it exists over time.
And that's one of the coolest parts about it too, is that like everyone has their own creative journey. Like, even if we're talking about just like the most amateur of amateur person in whatever creative output, maybe they like pick up a pencil and draw and like take a class for like 3 months and then just like doodle occasionally for the rest of their life, right? And that's the extent of their creative expression. But then like somebody else might go through that same experience and be like, wow, this is fucking amazing, and like do all this stuff. But then like by the like overall standard, even maybe their drawings are like 10 times worse than the other guys, but it doesn't actually even matter. Like it's because it's like their own path.
Yeah, it's completely an individual journey, and you can share your journey and your experience, but it's never going to be the same as someone else's. And that's why it's hard to compare your creative work to others in that way, because everyone's on a different path and on a different plane of the creative journey, wherever that may be. But
and I think that's why, like, academic music was something that never interested me. Like I don't think I would have been happy doing that. I think I would have really, really hated it. Like if I had tried to go to music school or something like that. Like I knew pretty early that I didn't want to.
So yeah, I think it was similar with me.
But it's you know, it's one of those things where it felt like this is a system that's designed to make you not have your own individual path.
Well, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think that it also just really is determined by how you approach it. And I think some people are much more academically focused in approaching things. But I also think that some people discover their passion through that academia, you know?
Yeah.
You might take a class and be like, this is really cool. I really like music. And so you take more classes, and that's, you know, kind of how it goes along in your path. And I think that there's a huge benefit to being, you know, classically trained and having that experience. And that's honestly sometimes been some of my struggle, is feeling the fact that I'm not classically trained, I'm missing out on something. But again, as we've discussed, it's everyone's, you know, own unique creative journey through things. But it for me, I always worried that it would be too limiting, you know, that I would learn these rules and then feel like I had to sit inside of some sort of box or framework, which I'm sure isn't the case.
No, I would say that's definitely not the case. Like it's, for me, you know, part of the reason I didn't want to go is because I already knew a decent amount of the theory that I would have learned. Because like jazz theory tends to be fairly complex when you compare it to like the equivalent academic level of like classical theory. Like they end up at the same place. Like the theory is the theory is the same. It's just that like you get exposed to it a lot earlier in jazz than you would in classical. But so like, you know, I don't think learning theory is ever really bad. Like because it just gives you more tools to work with. It's not like you just have to understand that it's not something where you say, okay, well, theory says this, so now I must do it like this forever. It just
you have to apply it in your own way to your own work.
It's like a way of just describing like how certain things work. Like, oh, you know, these chords interact with these chords in this kind of way. This is a way to describe the sound and describe the interaction, right? And then so you're able to use that device and use that tool and like intentionally and say, oh, I know that if I do this with this chord, then it's going to sound like this, which maybe will lead the listener to think that the track is going this way, but then I can like divert their expectations by going this way, and then like that creates the aesthetic that I want to create, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I think, you know, it doesn't even have to be like classical training. Just like learning some music theory or learning as much music theory as you can is helpful because it just gives you like a mental framework for describing and understanding it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that's well surmised. And I can't help but our this awesome conversation we're having about like creativity and everything, I can't help but draw a lot of parallels to some of the things we're saying, because I want to talk about Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and hearing all of this, like taking your own path and all of these tools and all of this journey just makes me like,
just like playing Breath of the Wild,
but really like, and this is okay. So that's my segue.
Good job.
But
that's my segue. This is your segue. Now we're all just going to ride hoverboards forever.
A Segway's not a hoverboard.
Well, the hoverboard is like the evolution of the Segway, I feel like.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want, you know, exploding batteries, that's fine. Speaking of exploding batteries, I think it was during the Super Bowl, or it might have been. There was a Samsung commercial that was just like, it just shows like all of this like testing and rigorous testing process. and they're like, we rigorously test all of our phones now. The new Samsung, blah, 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 whatever. And it was like specifically basically them being like, so guys, our batteries don't explode. Yeah, our batteries don't explode anymore. We promise. We
double, triple promise.
Yeah, but it was just funny. Anyway, so Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the new Zelda game, in case you weren't aware. It released yesterday for the Wii U and the Switch. Also, the Nintendo Switch came out yesterday. I can't speak on that because I don't own one yet. I will at some point in the future.
Also like $300, so yeah.
Yeah, who knows when. But I went to Target and picked up Breath of the Wild yesterday morning. I played and streamed probably about 6 hours, 7 hours or whatnot of it. And I only have to say that the reviews are all right. Nothing about this game has been overhyped. If anything, it's been underhyped.
Oh, man.
And it like comparing, well, you know, harkening back to our first episode, talking about hyping a game, so little was released about this game. One, because I think, as we've also talked about in the past, the sense of player discovery is very important. And there's so much in this game that is so new. If you've played a Legend of Zelda game before, if you've played all the Legend of Zelda games before, or if you've never played one, this game will be amazing because it is a Legend of Zelda game in the lore and in the characters and the setting, but it's an open world adventure game first and foremost. You could slap any characters, any name in it, and it could be a completely different IP. And I think that that's amazing, honestly. Like, it has a lot of influence with Legend of Zelda themes and like the, you know, level design and whatnot, but it breaks all of the things that you know about Legend of Zelda. So you know, I'm not going to get like story spoilery with it or anything.
Spoilers, no.
In Legend of Zelda games, so like if you've played Ocarina of Time, you start out, you have nothing, you get the sword, you get the shield, you get the item, you get the blah blah, you do the first temple, you get another item, you use that item in the temple, you go to the next temple, you get another item, you use the item in the temple, and you continue and progress and collect items until the end. Yeah, you have a lot of items and you fight the big bad boss and you win, you beat the game. This one, you start out and there's weapons everywhere. Weapons break. You pick up weapons, you pick up shields, you start out with a bow when you find a bow. Like, you can have a bow at any point. You just pick it up off an enemy and it's like, look, now I have a bow. Ta-da.
Oh, that's awesome.
Chest. Arrows and bows are integral to the game. Like, it's vitally important, and it's not this like glorified, you have the hero's bow mechanic. It's like, there's this bow, there's that bow, there's a military bow, there's like these different kinds of bows.
If you don't have a bow, you need to go kill the enemy with a bow so you can get a bow.
Yeah, exactly. Or arrows, which are also, you know, kind of a highly coveted commodity. But outside of the weaponry, which again, you just collect whenever you beat an enemy, oh, he dropped his club, let me pick this up and then beat him over the head with it. You have this, the main key item is this Sheikah slate, which is essentially a tablet. And it has these different abilities that you can add to it. And so the first area you're in, you're trapped there. You can't leave it until you complete these 4 shrines, which are basically just like mini dungeons that have puzzles that take maybe 15 minutes at the most, depending on how complex the puzzle is. But at each one, you unlock a new ability for the Sheikah slate. So these abilities are, and this is, keep in mind, this is the tutorial area, which took me about 4 to 5 hours to complete.
Oh, man.
So you get, before you're even released into the world and can go anywhere and do whatever you want, you have bombs, which are limitless. They have a cooldown. There's like spherical regular bombs that roll, and then there's cube bombs that you can just like place and they don't roll. And each one has its own independent cooldown, and you can detonate them whenever. So you like put a bomb down, walk away, hit the button, detonate the bomb, wait for the cooldown, throw another bomb, you know, have bombs.
That's
bombs
cool.
Explode. So you
Bombs
get
go
that
boom?
ability. Yeah. Then you get this ability, I think it's cryesis or something. Basically, it lets you make a pillar of ice on water. I would say out of all of them, it's one of the more lackluster, but it definitely has its uses.
Like boosting yourself up off a lake kind of thing, or like...
Yeah, so a lot of the times, like, you can only swim a certain distance. Like, you have a stamina gauge, and when your stamina reaches 0, you drown and wash up back on the shore with a missing heart.
Oh.
But so
your heart has been removed from your
things.
Chest.
It's just, oh no,
you wake up on the shore with a missing heart. Oh, it's like, I stole your lungs.
I stole your heart.
Anyway.
And so it's useful. But then the 2 other abilities that you get that are absolutely amazing is, one of them is called stasis. And when you use the stasis ability, everything kind of gets a yellowy hue to it. And you can see objects that are solid yellow, you can use stasis on. So for example, objects that move, like Indiana Jones giant rolling boulders, you use stasis on it and it stays in place, and there's a little like, you know, audio timer that plays down, and so you know when it's going to unstasis. The cool thing about stasis that you can also use, I mean, I guess some of the stuff is treading into minor spoilers of the starting area, but again, whatever. It's just me. I want to talk about this because this is important.
No, shut
up. When an object is stasised and you smack it with a weapon, you're applying kinetic force to it. And then when it goes out of stasis, it'll launch with all of the force you've applied to it. So you can
knowing Nintendo, I feel like they use that mechanic a lot throughout the game. Probably.
Well, but that's one of the things about this. So there's no like mechanic. I don't even know that. Okay, hold on. I'll get back to that point. But the last ability is magnesis, which lets you magnetically move metal objects around. This includes moving metal boxes, moving metal platforms, pulling a metal treasure chest out from the bottom of a lake.
Wow.
Taking a metal box and throwing it around and smashing it into enemies. It's incredible. And it's hard to describe it and do it justice. You'll just have to see a video of it at some point, which I'm going to put together like a first impressions Breath of the Wild video for Thursday because it's going to be great. But so point being, those are the abilities that you have leaving the tutorial area. And I haven't gotten super far outside of that. But that right there is hugely different from any other Legend of Zelda game because you would never have that many abilities when you're starting out.
Yeah,
but
it's like you start off with just your sword and then you got to like earn all the things by completing dungeons.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that it leaves you open to so many different avenues with how you can progress with the game. And so I played a bunch yesterday and I watched some of a stream of someone playing, and immediately I was like, wow, they have taken a completely different path just in the tutorial area in which the order of things that they got, like in the order they got the abilities. And I was like, oh yeah,
that's really awesome.
That's right. You can do that.
Yeah. Cause that's always been a thing about some open world games is that it feels like it's like a linear experience laid on top of an open world in the sense that like there is only real one like right path, but then you can like fuck around. But then if you want to go back to like the story, you're back to the story.
And so there are quests and there's like the story quest. It's like go to this place, do this thing and whatnot. But there's also side quests that will pop up and you have like a quest journal, which is new for, basically new for Zelda games. There was some sort of iteration in the past, but nothing that's actually like, quest journal as much as it is in Breath of the Wild. But it's just amazing in terms of I'm out exploring, and it reminds me a lot of Just Cause 2 in some regards, as well as Far Cry, because you come up to, there's like bokoblin monster camps around, and some of them have a treasure chest that you have to defeat the camp, and then you can open the treasure chest. But it's like some of them, there will be like a couple of explosive barrels, and it's like I could shoot a fire arrow with that, or I could pick up this metal box and bap all of them around with it. Or I could sneak in when it's nighttime and then just like get them all in their sleep. Or I could like paraglide over, because you get a paraglider when you, at some point, it could just paraglide over and then just like drop a bomb on them as I fall out of the sky with my paraglider.
That's awesome.
And there's so many ways to approach every single situation. And so I think that that's something that's totally different than Legend of Zelda games in the past. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah,
because
it definitely sounds a lot like Far Cry, because that was one of the coolest part about clearing the camps there.
Yeah.
Sorry, anyway, go on.
Well, no, exactly. Like that was what made me think about it, was having like a specific camp that you would like clear out or whatnot. But so when you have all of that freedom, it's not like, man, I can't do this until I get this item. It's like, how can I do this at this point in time? And because I don't know that there's going to be a need for like a hook shot item or anything like that, because you can climb anywhere. You have a stamina gauge. And so as you're climbing, your stamina like slowly goes down. So you can only climb a certain height before you plummet down. However, this might be treading on some spoilers a little bit. So if you're listening and you're concerned about some minor spoilers, cover your ears, skip ahead about a minute. But so when you complete shrines, which you complete 4 shrines in the tutorial area, you get a spirit orb. These spirit orbs, once you have 4 of them, at least so far as I can tell, you take and you pray at the statue of Hylia, and it'll let you upgrade your hearts, give you another heart container, or upgrade your stamina. So it's like you have control over sort of how you evolve
Yes, you get like
playing
a
the
bonus
game.
for each shrine that you accomplish. Or,
Well, so
yeah.
I mean, you get after 4, you can upgrade
Okay.
a heart container or stamina, and there might be other things that come into play. But like, I don't know. There might be a magic meter at some point. I don't know. There might
It's a
be
magic meter.
There might be other key items. I don't know, because from what I understand, when you complete the tutorial area, you can go to Ganon's castle and like try to fight him. You can try to beat the game right out of the gate. From what I gather, there's nothing stopping you. The game is essentially you going around trying to gather strength and resources to be able to beat the game. I don't see any real linear path. There's the linear main quest that's like, go fight Ganon, or go on this quest to gain power and be able to do the things. But you could go and do that main quest without going to any of the shrines or without doing any other collection and still be completely unprepared to beat the game, I feel like.
Yeah.
So, one, incredible replayability. I can already tell. Even just having, barely gotten outside of the tutorial area.
You can just play it so many different ways.
So many different ways. And I don't know for sure, but I think that there is randomness in what items are in the treasure chests.
Oh.
So, and I think this because of watching someone else do a stream of the like beginning area in my own experiences, and I don't want to speak too much on that because it's more spoilery. But that would be a neat thing if that's true, which I would kind of be surprised if it wasn't. I think some treasure chests might have specific items in them, but others could just be randomly generated. Like the treasure chest you find at the monster camps, because those do respawn out over time.
Oh, so they probably are random then if they respawn.
Yeah.
That's really cool though. It sounds like they've taken a lot of elements from other games and kind of combined them. And people say like, oh, well, they're just like copying other games. Well, but I think this is what we want. Like we want games that have a formula to like stick with maybe the core theme and the core aesthetic. Like it's still a Zelda game, but then start to incorporate some of these other ideas and expand upon their framework, right? And it sounds like that's exactly what they've done with this game, is that they've taken what works with Zelda and then added on other stuff and kind of gone back to the basics. Well, not back to the basics, but like, stripped away a lot of the excess stuff that like wasn't necessary to the core experience, and then expanded that core experience to be something new.
So it's the kind of thing where like, in Far Cry 3, you play the game and then you eventually get the wingsuit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine playing Far Cry 3 and you always have the wingsuit. Or imagine trying to play Just Cause 2 and you have to progress further in the game before you get a grappling hook, before you can tether things, or before you have a parachute.
Yeah.
That's the difference between traditional Legend of Zelda games and Breath of the Wild, is basically how I'm seeing it. And I love it. It's awesome having this arsenal of abilities. It makes it so much fun to play and just be like, what's going to happen? One of the best things is using the map. You can put down pin markers. So I died at this giant stone boss somewhere, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put a skull here because there's a bad dude there.
Oh.
When you die on the map, it shows an X where you last died that says RIP. So, that's always great.
Nice.
And even being, my biases, I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan, but I'm also very critical of games just in general. And I really, at this point in time, only have one complaint about the game, and that's the equipment inventory management. So you have like 7 or 8 slots for weapons. And if that's full, you can't pick up any new weapons unless you throw one or drop one from your inventory.
Throw them at enemies?
Yes, you can. Oh. You can throw any weapon.
Be like, this club is shitty. Bonk. All right, picking up this sword.
100%.
That's kind of epic.
And so the downside to this, though, is if you open a chest and there's a weapon in it, it's like, here's a rusty broadsword. Oh, your inventory's full. And then Link closes the chest. And the chest stays there, and you can reopen it. But then you have to go into your inventory, pick a weapon you don't want, drop it,
and then go through
and then reopen the chest.
Opening animation again.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not really even like a major complaint. It's more of just like a quality of life annoyance, I feel.
Yeah.
Because even if it was the kind of thing where you open the chest, it's like, hey, your inventory is full, and you can push start to go and
like
swap
throw
out
something
a weapon,
out and then finish opening the chest. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice. Or just Yeah, so the management of weapons is a little annoying. From what I can tell, you have infinite space for items like collectibles, like monster parts and stuff, which is nice. Same thing for food. But I also imagine that you can expand your inventory for weapons and whatnot as well. Also, seeing Link with the weapon on his back and the shield and like the bow and the arrows and him like decked out is really cool.
Yeah, that does sound really cool. Yeah, you've definitely made me really excited for the game. I need to go play Wind Waker so I at least like understand what Zelda games are like, and then I'm gonna definitely pick it up.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, and I have no idea how long of a game it's even going to be, but
yeah, I mean that's some of the things that you won't really know at the start are does the sense of progression feel good as you get later on into the game? Because if that's the one thing I can see being potentially concerning is that if you start off with all these with all the abilities, then is there a sense of progression as you get later into the game? And as long as they make sure that that's the case, then I think they're fine.
Yeah, and I wonder how it'll kind of pan out, because again, like you're saying, will it just be that you get newer and different weapons and items and like equipment, or will there be more, key items that allow you to do things?
Yeah.
Or will it just be sort of upgrading your abilities in kind of like a quote unquote Link build in more of an RPG fashion? Because there's like elixirs you can make that will increase your stamina for a certain amount of time, or you can increase your hearts for a certain amount of time and things like that. So
that's interesting.
It'll be really interesting to see, but
yeah.
It's fantastic. I couldn't have asked for more. And yeah, we'll see how it pans out, but
yeah, it's definitely just so interesting to see them like change their item model, because it definitely seemed like before they used a very like lock and key approach to how the items worked in the game.
Yes.
It's like you are blocked from this area until you get this item. Now you can do all these things because now you have this item. It's like it doesn't even really at the end of the day, it sort of stops mattering what each item does, because really each item just like goes over the barrier. The barrier just looks different. Like
yeah.
Which now it sounds like it's more about what you can do and like the interesting, the physics sandbox that you can play with some of these items. And I definitely think like almost every game that like has introduced some sort of like physics sandboxy elements like this has benefited. Like everyone loves it.
Are amazing. I can't tell you, when I'm like doing a jump slash and I get hit out of midair, I'm like, oh god, that looked like that hurt so bad, because of how Link lands and the ragdoll of him.
Oh man.
But it looks so good. Like in terms of like genuine, you just got wrecked. Link smacks the ground and rolls, and like it's very good.
Just got wrecked.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely be putting together a video of like first impressions and to talk about it and whatnot. So I'll upload that on Thursday, so you can watch that and see some of the awesome things that are possible with it, and some of the things that I don't even know that are possible yet that I may still continue to discover. But it's fantastic, and the sense of discovery is immense, because again, like I said, so here's let me break it down. If you've played a Legend of Zelda game and you liked it, you'll love this game. If you haven't played a Legend of Zelda game and you like open world adventure games, you'll love this game. If you haven't played a Zelda game, don't really know what an open world adventure game is, you should still probably pick up this game, because it's approachable. It can be challenging, but it's very approachable. Like I don't feel that I have benefited from my like Legend of Zelda knowledge playing this game. Like that doesn't give me any skill outside of maybe a little bit in combat, but because the weapons are different, the combat's a little different. It's not the same. It's not like, hey, I've played Ocarina of Time, so I can breeze through Majora's Mask, no problem. The skill doesn't translate. It's like blank slate. You're learning new things. You're learning new abilities. You're learning what you can do. You're playing around with physics.
I thought you start off with some abilities on the slate. Doesn't it start off blank? Does it not start off blank? What's the slate called again?
The Sheikah slate.
The Sheikah slate.
Well done.
So do you have to draw a picture of Sheikah on there first?
No.
Is that like Sheik A and Sheik B? Sheikah, Sheik B?
No, that's the... No, stop it. Oh, stop it. But yeah, I don't think that this game has been hyped enough. And
which is funny given like our previous conversations on hype and like the modern gaming
definitely
industry.
Well, but and this is the thing, is that with No Man's Sky, what they hyped was not in the game. What Nintendo hasn't hyped for this game is everything that's in the game. And I think that's actually great though, because it was hyped enough and everyone was excited enough about it, because it's been 4 years since we've had like a real, well, longer than that. I don't even know when we've had I don't remember when Skyward Sword came out. Yeah. Like a major console release, not Spirit Tracks. And well, there was the 3DS Link Between Worlds, which I didn't play, but major console.
I mean, it seems like they really, these days we get like one per generation, because Skyward Sword was Wii U, right?
The Wii.
Or no, it was
the
Wii.
Wii.
Oh, so never mind. So but it did come out on the Wii U as well, but it just released on the Wii.
I don't think it's out for the Wii U.
Oh, interesting.
Twilight Princess came out
like on
when
release.
The Wii was first released.
Okay, so that's why there was such a big gap. Because
however, it was a GameCube game that was ported to the Wii.
Oh, it was a GameCube game?
Yes.
Oh, I actually didn't even know that.
Twilight Princess, well, it released like simultaneously for the Wii and the GameCube, but they basically were like, let's add motion controls for the Wii.
Okay, so but it was originally developed as a GameCube game.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
Skyward Sword is a Wii game, was developed for the Wii, uses motion controls extensively.
But that was just after the Wii Motion Plus, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. See, that's interesting. I never knew that Twilight Princess was a GameCube game, because I only experienced it like when the Wii came out.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same thing that's going on right now with Breath of the Wild, that it's released for the Wii U, but also the Switch. It was developed for the Wii U, but also upgraded graphically and whatnot for the Switch.
Oh,
essentially.
Yeah, because I've heard that like it doesn't run at the Switch's native resolution or something like that.
No, it does.
Or it doesn't have like 1080p. I think was what the complaint was. I don't remember.
I don't believe that that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about the Switch. It just, to me, it seems like the battery life isn't long enough to like make it worth it.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I own an external battery pack that like you just plug in USB. I'm not really, battery life is of little concern to me. I don't think I'm going to be out in the park playing for more than 3 hours. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. But again, I can't speak to it because I don't have one yet.
It's interesting.
But when I do, I'll speak to it.
It's just like I am concerned that it's going to be one of those things where like, yeah, maybe the console itself is good, but I'm sort of going to end up feeling like, well, then what's the point of the mobile? I guess. I don't know. But we'll just see. Maybe it depends. They'll have like different games or something. I have no idea.
I think the mobile is for the person-to-person multiplayer, really.
Really? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And being able to have a console quality game that you can take with you without needing to bring a TV and a bunch of cables. So
yeah, because then even the external battery pack is like not even that big of a deal. It's like you just have to have a backpack, like basically.
Yeah, it's great. So I'll probably gush a little bit more on it later. But then again, I don't know that I'll talk about Breath of the Wild a whole lot more on the podcast, because the biggest thing about the game is discovery and discovering the world and having your own experience, much like we were talking about. That's why we were
discovered
talking about
the world.
That's when we were talking about the creativity and whatnot. I was like, this is very reminiscent of things. But
yeah,
I wanted to speak on it at least for a little bit. TLDR, get the game. You'll like it, unless you loathe adventure games and you loathe open world games. If you don't like those, don't worry about it. But I think it's a monumental Nintendo game. I hope that it speaks to some of the direction they're taking with their future games and breaking free of some of the mold that they've created, which isn't necessarily bad. But I mean, if it's going to be this successful and this well done, again, 4 years of development. So there's that to keep in mind, but just,
yeah, that's a long time.
I'm excited to play more.
It's interesting because Nintendo has always been one of those developers for me that like, it really feels like they understand like the fundamentals of game design, right? With like the way they lay out their levels, etc. It's like,
yes,
they're very, very good at like, taking a mechanic, like expanding on the mechanic, then like, okay, now you use it in this different way. Okay, now you can combine the two ways. And it's like, a lot of the Mario games, I think, are a really good showcase for that, because like they'll introduce the mechanic, they'll have you play around with it a little bit, then they'll like amp up the difficulty, then you'll have like a third stage, which is like, okay, now you have to like really master this mechanic, and then you'll move on to the next stage, which is like introduces a different mechanic, you know?
Yeah, which is why it's interesting, because Breath of the Wild, it does that, and the shrine puzzles do challenge you to use some of the abilities in different ways. And so you learn different ways you can use them in. However, it's also a lot of self-discovery.
Yeah, and that's why it's so cool to see them like evolving in that way. You
Yeah.
know, because they've been doing that for decades at this point. And it's like, on the one hand, like some people say, okay, that's formulaic. That's what them being formulaic is. On the other hand, I say like, they understand the fundamentals of how to make the gameplay itself fun. Yes, there are issues with them not stepping outside of the box at times. But that's why this is so refreshing, because they're showing that they can do so. And when they do so, it's like the fundamentals also show through.
Yeah.
And it's just it just adds on to what they're already capable of doing by, you know, expanding their horizons and expanding their creativity.
Yep. So yeah, there you have it.
Another release that came out recently, which I don't know, I think we talked about it a while ago. It just came up to me now. It was the Horizon Zero Dawn, the like dinosaur robot hunting one.
Oh yeah.
Apparently that's really cool also.
You have a PS4, right?
Yes, I'm thinking about getting it potentially, because it looks cool.
Please do, because I would really like to know about it. It seems very cool and pretty unique as far as, again, open world dinosaur hunting games could be. But I'm interested in it for sure. So if you get it,
it just looked like it had a cool aesthetic.
Yeah,
as well.
It does kind of seem like it's probably just going to be like a Skyrim with dinosaurs.
Yeah,
but I'm a fan of it. Like, I'm a fan of that aesthetic. So
yeah, we'll see. But apparently the reviewers have been going rave. Like,
cool.
You know, they all went to a rave, so that's why they gave it good reviews.
Nice. Speaking of raves, ready to rave at some mystery sounds?
I am so ready.
Cool. Last time I believe you defeated me mercilessly.
Defeat. The legs, the arms.
I now have no more feet. So do you want to receive a mystery sound or give a mystery sound first?
I shall give a mystery sound first.
All right, then we'll play your mystery sound clip number 1.
Numero uno.
Ha ha ha.
Ho ho ho.
That, if I'm not mistaken, is from Solar 2.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Ding ding ding.
That game actually has a lot of really nice music.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like background music as you roam around in space, smashing
objects.
Into things.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's a lot of fun. I actually put a surprising amount of time into that game. It's very just like zen and relaxing.
Yeah, it's got that like zen addictiveness, but then it like gets boring after a little bit. But it was definitely very cool when I was playing it. I definitely enjoyed it.
Oh, show. Okay, so now I've got mystery sound 1 from me to you. We'll see how this goes.
Damn, that's right up my alley. In this case, my alley is space exploration, with small green men.
Nice.
Yes, that is from Kerbal Space Program. It's the ship designer theme, in fact.
Indeed.
I've played so much of that game. Like, I fucking know what that music is. Like,
I see. I wasn't sure because I've never played it, but I was like, this is one, jazzy. So you're going to be like, yeah. And then two, you've logged tons of hours in Kerbal Space. So.
Oh, yes. And very few of those are like leaving the game on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game is so much fun.
Nice. Yeah, I might have to try and play it at some point. I just am worried because of all the math.
Maybe it's the kind of thing where I should stream it and you should watch. I've been a little bit hesitant of like streaming it because like Scott Manley has Kerbal Space Program like on lock as far as the internet persona stuff. So it's like his thing. But you know, it's probably okay.
I'd stream it so that I can watch.
Yeah.
If you're gonna play it, like I think you're right. I think I would rather enjoy watching it more so than having to play it myself.
I haven't played it in a really long time, and they've like totally turned it into an actual game because it like used to be a sandbox, like complete sandbox, but they've added in like science and like there's like funding. You can still play sandbox, but they've added in a ton of stuff. So
that's
because
cool.
the game actually, like when I played it, it was in early access, and since then it's full released.
Oh, nice. Well, then yeah, if you choose to revisit it,
yeah,
let me know and stream it, and I'll check it out.
They're also one of those cool companies who have like, I mean, I think it started off it's a Unity game. It started off just as a couple of people, and then they pretty much hired a bunch of people from the modding community because a bunch of people made like all these awesome mods, and they're like, okay, we're gonna now hire you, take this, make this official content, and now just make the game that much better.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so it definitely was pretty cool.
Cool.
My little
all right. Yeah, definitely. Now your mystery clip number dos.
I'm kind of sad I cut it off where I did because I was starting to sound really good.
That really sounds like it's from Bastion. Cause that guitar. I'm gonna go with Bastion.
Are you sure?
No, I don't know.
Are you absolutely sure?
I don't know if you're playing with my head or not.
Trying to help you out here. Are you absolutely sure?
It's not from Bastion.
You could say that.
Okay, so it's not from Bastion. Well, then I'm not. What other game has guitar music kind of like that? If it's not from Bastion, then I'm gonna need a hint. I think.
So this is definitely, I think the genre these days is called action RPG.
Okay.
Which I always thought was a weird genre title, but yeah.
With guitar.
This game is a sequel to a game that is very much inspired by a sequel to another game that was made in the 90s.
Diablo 2?
No, but you're really close.
Really?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking it sounded kind of like the town theme from Diablo 2.
Yes. So what I was saying is that this is the sequel to a game that was inspired by
Torchlight 2.
Yes, there you go. Ding, ding, ding.
You know, it's funny. I was gonna use a clip from Torchlight 2, and then I didn't.
Yeah, but it's funny. Apparently, actually, the reason their music sounds so similar is that it's the same composer who worked on Diablo 2, worked on Torchlight 1 and 2.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's cool. Okay.
And I was doing a little research for it, and apparently, so like Diablo 1 and 2 were made by Blizzard, technically, or published by Blizzard, but the studio that did it was Blizzard North, who actually ended up becoming Runic Games, which made Torchlight. So it's actually like, that's the path of the Diablo games, which is also why Diablo 3 is very different, because it was made by like a totally different team.
Good to know. That's cool. I didn't realize that, but it makes sense. I definitely heard Diablo 2 vibes once I started thinking about it. Cool.
That was a very good game. I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was neat. I think that it just was one that the loot grinding aspect of it kind of got
Yeah.
to me after.
And
a
the
while,
story
but
wasn't very compelling, unfortunately.
It was nice. It was more friendly to play than Diablo 2.
Yeah.
It was less torturous.
But yeah, I think what really held it back is that the characters weren't that engaging or fleshed out. So there wasn't a lot of like plot or like setting engagement in the game. It was purely about the gameplay to a point, I think. Which is why at a certain point you're just like, okay, I'm bored.
All right, well, I'll give myself a merit for that because it was a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay. You're going to get the next one, so it's fine.
Okay. All right, well, here's my mystery sound 2 for you.
So one thing about this game is that it uses my favorite form of humor quite a lot, but it's pretty much the same joke over and over again.
That's fine, though. It's a good joke.
Enter the gungeon. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
I figured you'd get that one right pretty much off the bat.
From the second
I
floor?
love all of the gun puns.
Gun puns, yeah.
It's what?
Is that from the second floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at you. Just on a roll.
Yeah, something I played
on a
recently.
dodge roll. Yeah, I know.
Except for
we all have been playing
Kerbal,
it.
like, haven't played in a while, but it's just enough hours that it's like sunk into your brain, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
So you already ding, ding, ding? Yes, you did.
I
Okay.
ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
That's
Okay,
awesome.
Now,
So it's
your
it's-
mystery.
I'm 2 for 0 and you're 1 and 1?
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe I can tie it up.
Pretty sure you're going to.
Okay.
Entschuldigung, der amerikanische Traum. Nico, my cousin! Nico, my cousin! Nico, my cousin!
So yeah, that.
So that's from GTA 4. Was that like the intro / loading music subverted with Nico, my cousin?
No, it was just actually like, because it's the credits leading up to the part where Roman actually drives up.
Oh, okay.
And then I just like cut together the clip of him saying Nico, my cousin a few times at the end and tacked it on.
Nice. Okay, well, thank you. I like that.
I was hoping that you'd be like, I don't know what this is from, and then hear that and laugh. So I think I succeeded.
You succeeded. That's exactly what happened. I was like, I'm supposed to get this? I don't. Nico, my cousin. Hey, Nico, my cousin. Hey,
Nico, my cousin. Yeah,
Nico, my cousin.
So I was inspired for this one because at work this week I got an email from somebody named Roman. And
oh, nice.
all I could think of was Nico, my cousin. Nico, my cousin.
Did you like hide that in your email response?
In my notes.
Nice. Perfect.
It literally is in my notes.
That's
so yeah,
beautiful.
So that's a little, story time from me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for the gimme.
Ding, ding, ding.
I appreciate it. But I think you're going to get this last one as well. So here's the last mystery sound.
Not so mysterious this week.
That's fine. It's fun.
I should play this game just cuz, too. Ding, ding, ding.
appreciate how all of your responses to all of these have just been like, not even, not like, ooh, I think this is this game. It's just like, I'm going to make an offhanded joke remark because I am so confident that I know what game this is from.
Well, yeah,
Beautiful.
I mean, you definitely have given me one that was I've been playing super recently, and then 2 games that I've probably played in my top 10 games most played of all time. Like, so.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. Well, I mean, it wasn't struggling for difficulty this time. It was more just like,
The struggle's real!
let's see what's fun. Oh, I almost did Gungeon last episode, but then I didn't. So I figured I should put it on this one. So
We also broke the theme of referring to the games in the podcast too, didn't we?
Did we? I think we did.
We've been on and off breaking it occasionally anyway, but
Yeah, well, this was less of a game focused one and more of a music creative focused
tis true.
thing, and then
Tis
Zelda.
true.
So,
Music
yeah,
Zelda.
music Zelda. But
Yeah.
I think that's gonna about do it for us on this episode.
It's gonna wrap
which-
things up. A boom chicka, chicka boom chicka.
That theme always forever. Is that a theme anymore, or is it just now a trope?
That's just me.
That's just
Yo.
Yo. We are on Twitter at tuneintogaming. If you do the tweeting thing,
That Tweety place.
yeah, with the bird, the Tweety bird.
I thought I
Or
saw
yeah.
a Twitter handle.
Twitter handle. If you're not into the tweeting thing, we're also on email, which is, I guess, still a thing
You
people do.
use the wrong letter. It's Gmail these days. Duh. It's no longer email. But
Because if you don't have a Gmail, what are you doing? It's tuneintogaming@gmail.com. If you want to send us questions, suggestions, comments, or otherwise.
or if there's something specific you want to hear us talk about, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that said, it's been fun. This has been Tune Into Gaming, episode 10, right? Something like that?
Yeah, this is episode 10. Look at us go.
Big 10. We are now double digits.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty
Good
exciting.
for us.
It means we've been doing
is
this
pretty
for
exciting, yeah.
over 20 weeks.
Yeah.
So anyway, go us. Congratulations. We're giving ourselves credit
Woohoo.
like we've been complaining about
Congratulations.
that we don't do.
We've won. No, again, I think that's really good. Like looking at this, I mean, we've done like I said earlier, we've done a good job in terms of just keeping ourselves enjoying the podcast. One
Mhm.
helps, but accountable with recording the episodes and more or less staying consistently on schedule. But just I think that it's been a pretty fun thing to do. And yeah, look at us, we've got 10 episodes. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I've certainly enjoyed this
Accomplishment.
episode and the episodes in the past, and I've also enjoyed all the episodes in the future, but in past tense. So, with that, just, letting that mull over in your brain, I think it's time to tune out.